There is no slow build up here. There is no creeping through a dark mansion or wondering what has happened to the local police force. Within minutes of starting Dino Crisis 2, you are thrust onto the shores of a prehistoric jungle, and the game makes its intentions crystal clear. The time for hiding is over. The moment Regina and the Trat team land, they are swarmed not by a handful of shambling corpses, but by a literal army of velociraptors. It's loud, it's chaotic, and it feels like Capcom just ripped the leash off the entire genre. The jump to Dino Crisis 2 feels like stepping out of the dark cellar and onto a high-octane action movie. The fixed cameras are back, but they aren't being used to hide scares anymore. They are being used to frame the carnage. You aren't just surviving, you're competing. The screen is immediately filled with a flashy, arcade-style UI that tracks your extinction points and combo streaks. It's a total subversion of everything I just spent 70 hours doing in the Resident Evil and Final Fantasy marathons. I remember the shock of this pivot back in the day. We expected Dino Crisis to stay in its lane as Resident Evil with dinosaurs, but Capcom had other plans. It feels like they took the Mercenaries mode from Resident Evil 3, that high-speed, point-based time trial, and decided to build an entire game around it. It's a move of absolute confidence. They knew the survival horror formula was reaching its saturation point on the PS1, so they decided to inject it with a massive dose of adrenaline and prehistoric aggression. Sitting here now, recording the footage for Index Entry 48, I'm struck by how snappy it all feels. The controls are sharp, the weapon switching is instantaneous, and the game doesn't want you to stop and think, it wants you to move. It's the ultimate jungle hook. It grabs you by the throat, hands you a submachine gun, and tells you to start racking up the points. As a survival horror fan, my first instinct is still to conserve ammo and check every corner, but Dino Crisis 2 laughs at that caution. It demands a different version of me, the arcade goer who wants to see the combo counter climb to the double digits. The atmosphere isn't one of dread, it's one of predatory excitement. We've traded the silence for the sounds of gunfire and a screech of raptors, and honestly, after the slog of Sheena Island, this is exactly the dopamine hit I needed. The jungle is dense, the dinosaurs are hungry, and for the first time in a long time, the hunter has become the hunted. Let's see how many points I can milk out of this Extinction event. Welcome to the PSX Index. I'm Parasine. In the world of game development, if it ain't broke, don't fix it is usually the golden rule. But Capcom in the year 2000 wasn't interested in rules, they were interested in evolution. The first Dino Crisis was, for all intents and purposes, Resident Evil in a lab coat. It had the limited inventory, the slow burn puzzles, and the constant fear of a single powerful predator stalking you through the shadows. It was a panic horror. Then came the sequel, and Capcom performed a radical pivot that still feels jarring to this day. They didn't just tweak the formula, they threw the chemistry set out the window and replaced it with a flamethrower. The shift from survival to action horror is the defining characteristics of Dino Crisis 2. As I mentioned, you can see the seeds of the Resident Evil 3 Mercenaries mode, that frantic reward-based loop where killing things quickly and stylishly was the only goal. Capcom clearly looked at the minigame and realised there's an entire audience craving that arcade high, and they decided to commit to it with a full-price sequel. As a survival horror purist, this should feel like a betrayal. I'm supposed to want to count my bullets, I'm supposed to want to feel vulnerable, but there's a dry, undeniable brilliance of how Capcom handled this transition. They didn't just make the game easier, they changed the objective. The horror doesn't come from a lack of resources anymore, it comes from the sheer, overwhelming speed of the enemy. You aren't scared because you're out of ammo, you're scared because you're being hunted by something faster than a human being, and the only way to stay alive is to keep the combo meter running. It's a ballsy move that only a company at the peak of its powers could pull off. It turned the franchise from a Resident Evil clone to its own distinct animal. It feels like the developers sat in the room and said, what if we just let the player have fun? It sounds simple, but in the context of the late 90s survival horror landscape, where frustration was often a key component of the atmosphere, this was a revolution. Playing it back for the Index, I can see the Capcom DNA starting to mutate into what would eventually become Devil May Cry or Onimusha. It's that specific brand of Japanese action design where style is just as important as survival. You aren't just clearing a room, you're performing the pivot that might have been radical, but it was also incredibly prophetic. Capcom knew that the static, slow burn era was reaching its limit, and they chose to go out with a roar instead of a whimper. In most survival horror games, your score is simply staying alive. In Dino Crisis 2, your score is a currency. It's the moment where the game sheds its Resident Evil skin and reveals the arcade heart beating underneath. Every time you pull the trigger and a raptor hits the jungle floor, a number pops up on the screen, Extinction points. This system is a pure dopamine machine. It completely rewires how you interact with the environment. In the previous entries of the Index, seeing a group of enemies usually meant a calculation of risk. Is it worth 3 bullets to kill that zombie, or should I just run past? In Dino Crisis 2, that calculation is flipped. You see a pack of raptors, and your brain shouts, that can buy me a new energy gun. You spend these points at computer terminals scattered through the game, and let me tell you, the shopping experience is addictive. You aren't just buying supplies, you're buying power. You're upgrading your carry capacity, locking armour, and purchasing heavy-duty weaponry like a solid cannon or a flamethrower. It turns the entire game into a loop of violent investment. You kill to get points, you spend points to kill more efficiently, and the cycle continues until you're a walking tank in a spandex suit. I find the no damage bonus particularly hilarious. If you clear a screen without taking a hit, the game rewards you with a massive point multiplier. It's the game's way of saying, good job not being lunch, here's a grenade launcher. It encourages a level of aggressive perfectionism that I haven't felt since my days in a local arcade. You aren't just trying to survive the encounter, you're trying to look cool while doing it. I found myself room hopping, leaving and re-entering areas just to trigger the dinosaur respawns, so I could farm a few extra points for that one expensive upgrade. It's the same just one more go mentality that defined the 90s. Capcom took the high stakes tension of survival horror and married it to the reward loop of an RPG, and the result is a game that is almost impossible to put down. It's a system that makes you feel like a predator. By the time you knitted Regina out with her dual submachine guns, the dynamic has completely shifted. You aren't the victim anymore. The dinosaurs should be the ones counting their extinction points, because with every terminal I visit, I'm becoming the most dangerous thing on the island. If the extinction points are the currency of Dino Crisis 2, then the combo meter is the heartbeat. It's the ultimate visual representation of the mercenaries' DNA we talked about. In the top corner of the screen, there's a timer and a counter that tracks how many prehistoric threats you've neutralised in a single fluid chain. If you stop moving or you hesitate too long between trigger pulls, the meter resets. It's Capcom's way of putting a gun to your head and telling you to never ever stop running. The UI element changes the flow of the game into something I like to call violent choreography. In Resident Evil, the flow is enter a room, assess, shoot, move. In Dino Crisis 2, the flow is sprint, blast, spin, blast, dodge, blast. You aren't just traversing a jungle, you are performing a lethal dance. The dry irony of it is that while the graphics are pushing the PS1 to its absolute limit with lush, cinematic backgrounds, the HUD looks like it belongs in a Street Fighter machine. It's a clash of styles that shouldn't work. but it creates a high retention energy where you're constantly chasing the next perfect screen. The no damage bonus is the cherry on top. You clear an entire area without a raptor getting its claws onto Regina or Dylan. The game showers you with points. It transforms the horror from a physical threat into a professional insult. Getting hit doesn't just lower your health, it ruins your score. It's a very early look at the stylus action philosophy that would eventually define games like DMC. You can almost see the S-rank system being born in the humid air of these prehistoric swamps. I find myself getting genuinely tilted when a dinosaur just nips at my heels and breaks a 10-hit combo. It's a specific kind of frustration that you don't just get in traditional survival horror. It's not the fear of death, it's the fear of being bad at the game. Capcom successfully shifted the stakes from can I get to the end to can I get to the end and look like a god while doing it. It's this arcade-centric pressure that keeps the game feeling fresh even in 2026. On DuckStation, with the resolution bumped up, the UI pops with a clarity that makes the game feel much younger than it actually is. It doesn't feel like a 26-year-old relic, it feels like a fast-paced indie brawler that just happens to have incredible pre-rendered art. The combo meter isn't just a UI trick, it's the game's soul. It's the engine that drives the Extinction and ensures that the dopamine never has a chance to drop.
Did you swing your precious machete around? Well, I guess I can help you out. Over.
Good, okay. I'll put a key in front of the door as a mark. Don't let me down. Over and out.
In any great action movie, you need a dynamic that balances style with brute force. Dino Crisis 2 achieves this by splitting the campaign between two very different leads, the returning fan favourite Regina and the newcomer Dylan Morton. This isn't just a cosmetic swap though, it's a deliberate mechanical shift that changes how you approach the extinction at hand. Regina is exactly how we remember her, sleek, fast and tactical. She handles the precision work, utilising her agility and specialised weaponry like submachine guns to keep the combo meter humming. But then there's Dylan. If Regina is a Scalpel, Dylan is a Sledgehammer, and he brings a heavy-handed, ground and pound energy to the jungle. He carries the solid slug shotgun and the machete, and playing as him feels significantly more weighted. There is a dry humour in the way the game forces you to switch between them. It's usually triggered by an environmental obstacle. Dylan uses his machete to hack through thick vines that Regina's stun rod can't touch, while Regina uses her technical skills to bypass electronic locks. It's a classic buddy cop setup where two leads are often separated, leaving you to wonder what the other is up to while you're busy being chased by a T-Rex. I always found the contrast between them fascinating. Regina represents the old Dino Crisis, the intelligence and the high-tech edge. Dylan represents the new direction, the raw power and the just shoot until it stops moving philosophy. Their interactions are brief but punchy, filled with that specific brand of 90s action movie dialogue that manages to be both incredibly cheesy and deeply earnest at the same time. Switching protagonists also keeps the gameplay loop from becoming stagnant. Just as you're getting comfortable with Regina's speed, the game yanks you into Dylan's boots and forces you to deal with the slower, more deliberate reload times of his heavy weapons. It keeps you on your toes. You have to master two different rhythms of combat, ensuring that your extinction point stays constant regardless of who is pulling the trigger. It's a dual protagonist system that actually serves the gameplay, rather than just being a narrative gimmick. Regina and Dylan are two sides of the Dino Crisis coin, the finesse and the fire, and as we push deeper into the mystery of Edward City, the chemistry between Regina's professional cool and Dylan's rugged determination becomes the glue that holds the chaotic prehistoric mess together.
Back for more, you one-eyed menace.
If the zombies in Resident Evil are a slow creeping dread, the dinosaurs in Dino Crisis 2 are a full-blown panic attack. This is where the survival part of the genre gets replaced by pure, unadulterated aggression. In Raccoon City, you can usually outrun a threat or dodge around a lunging corpse. On the island of Dino Crisis 2, the enemies don't just lunge, They hunt, they coordinate, they leap across the screen with a spread that makes the PS1 frame rate sweet. The AI here was a massive step up for the year 2000. Velociraptors don't just walk towards you in a straight line, they flank you, they jump over obstacles, pounce from off-screen, and in a particular bit of Capcom cruelty, they often attack in pairs. You'll be busy lining up a shot on one when its partner clears a hedge and takes a chunk out of your shoulder. It's a constant test of your reflexes and spatial awareness. You can't afford to be stationary. If you stop moving for a second, you're not a soldier, you're a buffet. Then you'd have the variety. You've got the pterodactyls diving from the sky, forcing you to aim upwards and stay immobile. The Allosaurus, which acts as a mini-boss that requires genuine tactical positioning, and the Oviraptors, who spit venom and move with a twitchy, unpredictable energy. Every new species introduced requires a mental shift in how you use your arsenal. It's not just about pointing and clicking, it's about knowing which tool in your Extinction point kit is the right one for the job. In Dino Crisis 2, the controls are great, but the enemies are better. There is a genuine sense of panic when you hear that specific raptor screech from off camera. It's a sound that triggers an immediate shot of adrenaline, forcing you to spin Regina or Dylan around and start spraying lead before you even see the threat. There is also a scale of the encounters. The T-Rex makes several appearances, and unlike the scripted cinematic escapes of the first game, these moments feel much more like a direct confrontation with a force of nature. It's prehistoric panic in its purest form. You aren't just fighting monsters, you're fighting the apex predators of history. Capcom didn't just give us dinosaurs, they gave us a reason to be afraid of the grass again. And in the high-speed world of this sequel, that fear is the ultimate motivator that keeps the combo meter running. Every great action game in the 32-bit era eventually had to face its greatest enemy, water. In the first Dino Crisis, the fear was being trapped in a small room with a laser grid and a hungry raptor. In the sequel, Capcom decided to take the horror somewhere you can't even breathe. It's time to talk about the underwater section of Edward City, a segment that remains one of the most visually stunning yet mechanically polarising moments in the game. The transition is immediate. Regina dons a heavy diving suit, the screen fills with a murky blue-green hue, and the physics of the entire game shift. Suddenly, you aren't sprinting, you're floating. The high-speed mercenaries flow we've been enjoying for the last hour is replaced by a slow, weightless glide. You have a jump jet on your back that allows you to propel yourself forward, turning the game into a semi-3D platformer for a brief moment. Regina is essentially walking on the seabed in a suit that looks like it weighs a ton, yet she's still racking up extinction points against prehistoric sea life. The main threat here is the Mosasaurus, fast, nimble aquatic predators that look like crocodiles on steroids. Fighting them is a completely different beast. You can't outrun them on land, so you have to master the float and shoot rhythm, using your specialised needle gun to pick them up before they can cycle back and ram you. The water level is usually the part of the game where everybody collectively groans. We've been conditioned by decades of gaming to expect frustrating controls and oxygen meters, but Dino Crisis 2 actually handles it with a lot of grace. It's less about the frustration of the water and more about the change in pace. It's a breather, ironically, from the relentless sprinting of the jungle. It forces you to slow down and appreciate the atmosphere. The technical achievement here shouldn't be overlooked either. Seeing the light filter down through the surface on the pre-rendered sea floor was a wow moment in the 2000s. Even now on DuckStation, with the resolution scaled up, the underwater environments have a haunting, quiet beauty that stands in a stark contrast to the screaming chaos of the surface world. But let's be real, as soon as I see a ladder leading back to dry land, I'm taking it. I miss my submachine guns, I miss being able to run, The underwater section is a brilliant atmospheric sidestep, but Dino Crisis 2 is at its best when your boots are on the ground and your finger is on the trigger. It's a necessary detour, a dip into the deep, but the heart of this game remains firmly in the dirt and the blood of the jungle.
Damaged. The third energy reactor has been damaged. Switching to emergency power. Areas will be blocked to prevent explosions.
The waiting should be over for game console fanatics, but it's not. PlayStation 2 went on sale at midnight, but only 165,000 have been shipped over, and they were all pre-booked. Sony reckons it's working overtime to make more units for Britain, so kids aren't too disappointed at Christmas. For some, the excitement's already proving too much.
I've got tomorrow off work, so I'll be playing this all day tomorrow, and I've got the weekend as well, and I think I might book next week off as well.
By the time Dino Crisis 2 arrived in the late 2000s, the PlayStation was basically a veteran on its way to retirement. The PS2 was already making waves, and the developers were starting to look towards the horizon, but Capcom wasn't done with the grey box just yet. In fact, they decided to use this sequel as a victory lap, squeezing every single ounce of processing power out of the hardware to create what I consider one of the best looking games on the system. The jump in visual quality from Survivor, or even the first Dino Crisis, is staggering. The original game used real 3D environments, which allowed for a moving camera, but resulted in blocky, sparse rooms. For the sequel, Capcom pivoted back to the pre-rendered backgrounds they had perfected in Resident Evil. The result is a lush, vibrant world that feels alive. The jungle isn't just a green box. It's a dense, humid thicket of swaying ferns, sun-dappled clearings and rusted industrial complexes that look like they've been sitting in the rain for 20 years. Capcom had to go backwards to static backgrounds, but it was the right call. By offloading the environmental rendering to those gorgeous paintings, they freed up the console's memory to focus on the character models and the dinosaurs. Regina and Dylan move with a fluidity that was rare for the 32-bit era, and the raptors have a snappiness to their animations that makes them feel genuinely dangerous. Playing on DuckStation in 2026 is a revelation. When you upscale those pre-rendered assets, you start to see the level of detail the artist poured into every frame. You can see the moss growing on the brickwork of Edward City and the way the light hits the scales of the T-Rex. It doesn't just look like a game, it looks like a high-end production. It's the technical peak of the console, a moment where the developers finally mastered the limitations of the hardware and turned them into strengths. I find this era of late-gen games incredibly nostalgic. There's something special about a developer who refuses to give up on the old machine. Capcom could have phoned this in, but instead, they gave us a game that looked better than many early PS2 titles. It's a testament to the craftsmanship of the era. They didn't have the shaders or the lighting engines we have today. They used art, composition, and sheer effort to make us believe we were lost in a prehistoric nightmare. It was the final brilliant flare of a dying star, and even now, it's bright enough to impress. There is a specific kind of purity in Dino Crisis 2. If the first game was a survival horror title, and Resident Evil is a dramatic horror series, then this is simply an arcade video game. It doesn't want to change your life or make you weep over a lost soul. It wants to give you a shotgun and a timer and ask you to go to work. It's built on the foundation of the arcade high, that addictive short burst energy that makes a 4-hour campaign feel like 20 minutes. This is why the game has such high retention. Every screen is a fresh challenge. You enter an area, the warning siren blares, and the music kicks into a high-tempo industrial beat that practically forces your thumb onto the run button. You aren't just traversing the map to find a key, you're traversing it because the act of movement itself is fun. Capcom mastered the fun factor here by removing the friction. In Resident Evil, the friction, limited saves, small pockets and slow movement is the point. In Dino Crisis 2, the friction is gone. You save whenever you want at the terminals, you have plenty of ammo if you play well, and you move like a professional athlete. I think this is why the game holds such a legendary status amongst those who played it in the year 2000. It was the perfect weekend rental. You could beat it in a single sitting, but you'd immediately want to start it over to unlock the Dino Coliseum or buy that one massive weapon you missed. It respects your time by being relentlessly entertaining. There are no boring parts. Even the puzzles are stripped back to their bare basics so they don't get in the way of the dinosaur slaying. There's a dry satisfaction in the Extinction at the end of the play session. You look at your total points, your rank, your kill counts, and you feel a sense of accomplishment that a slower horror game can't provide. It's the Mercenaries mode that expanded into a grand adventure. It's Capcom at their most playful, experimenting with the action genre in a way that would eventually lead them into Devil May Cry and the Monster Hunter series. Watching the footage back, I'm reminded that we don't always need a deep philosophical narrative to have a meaningful experience with a game. Sometimes, the meaning is just the flow. It's the perfect sequence of dodges and shots that clears a room of raptors without you taking a scratch. It's the arcade high that kept us coming back to the PS1 long after it should have been obsolete. Dino Crisis 2 isn't just a sequel, it's a celebration of everything that makes playing a game feel good. It's fast, it's loud, and it's unapologetically fun.
Regina, the gate is open. I know you don't want to, but you have to go back by yourself. I won't leave Paula.
Are you crazy?
Just go, please. You have the third energy data, right? When you get back to our original time, use the data to learn about third energy, then build a perfect gate and come pick us up for the last time.
Dylan. I will. I promise.
As the dust settles on Edward City and the portal to the future or the past, depending on how much you've been paying attention to the plot, closes behind us, I'm left with a profound sense of satisfaction. Dino Crisis 2 is a rare breed. It's a sequel that had the courage to look its predecessor in the eye and say, I'm going to do something completely different, and actually pull it off. It's the peak of Capcom's 32-bit action design, and it remains one of the most replayable, high-energy experiences on the entire console. It's also a bittersweet milestone. This game represents one of the times we saw classic Capcom formula refined to this level of polish on the PlayStation. As we move further into the PSX Index, the games will start to feel different. The tank control era is beginning to fade, and the experimentation of the early 2000s has taken over. Dino Crisis 2 was a hell of a way to say goodbye to that classic style, proving that you could take a slow burn horror engine and turn it into a world-class arcade shooter. I'm glad I had the chance to revisit Regina and Dylan. In a world of modern remakes and massive open worlds, there's something genuinely refreshing about a game that just wants you to shoot dinosaurs and buy bigger guns. It's honest, it's fast, and it's a masterclass in flow. My 36-year-old brain might not have the twitch reflexes of my 10-year-old self, but the dopamine hits just as hard today as it did back then. But the index waits for no man, and we have to keep moving. We've survived the zombies of Raccoon City, we've navigated the discount horrors of Sheena Island, and we've survived a prehistoric event. It's time to take a break from horror and heavy artillery for something a bit more acrobatic. Next time, we're trading the flamethrowers for ladders, mops, and a very famous grin. We're heading into the world of high-flying martial arts and slapstick comedy. It's time to see if I've got the timing to survive one of the most charmingly difficult platform brawlers on the system. Get your running shoes on. Next episode, we're jumping into Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster. 48 games down, 1,230 games to go. Let's see if we can keep the combo meter going, but in a completely different style of game. See you on the next one.